Oh, yeah. Did you,
Yep.
did you tweet it, Kirk?
Yep. Well, I tweeted it at 11:35.
I'm used to Omar telling me, reminding, got to tweet it out.
Mm-hmm. How do we want to do it? I thought we would just put them up there, but however we want to do it, I'll do it, and we'll do it in order, right? Okay. Yep. Okay. Perfect.
I'm all set.
I'm ready. Welcome, Miami Dolphins fans. You got your boy Perk here. That's my man, Dave Hyde. I am your Dolphins columnist. He is your Sun Sentinel columnist. And look, we have one of the biggest regular season games in Dolphins' recent memory on Sunday. The Buffalo Bills invade Hard Rock Stadium. The battle for AFC East supremacy. Dave Hyde, you just wrote about this today. Is it possible to overhype a Week 3 division game? And if so, are we going to do that this week with this game?
Let us do that. When's the last time we had a big game that if they win it, you can imagine big things? I mean, I'm going back to the early 90s when you could say, okay, if they win this game or if they beat this opponent, they're in the conversation for having a season that ends in the deepest parts of January or now February. Because even in the good years, 2008, 2016, in the past 20, there were ceilings on those. Them making the playoffs those years was a achievement. Now, if they beat Buffalo, and that's a big if. Look, they're 5-point underdogs going in. Buffalo's the heavyweight in the AFC right now. Maybe in the whole league, probably in the whole league. And certainly in the AFC East where they won the last two and supplanted New England as the team to beat. But if the Dolphins come out on top or compete, a good game, then you can say, okay, this certainly the start has been beyond what I thought. I thought if they come out 1-3, they'd be okay out of this 4-month stretch. 2-2 would be a bonus, and they're looking at 3-1 or 4-0 at this point.
Yeah, you're right, Dave, and we're going to talk more about that later. You're watching Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk. That's Dave Hyde. Let's dive into segment 1. Hey, Dave, that game at Baltimore, my goodness, 42-38, one of the great Dolphins games in franchise history. Tua Tagovailoa with the 469 yards passing, 6 touchdowns. That fourth quarter, absolutely amazing. Dolphins trailing 35-21 going into that fourth quarter. And while a lot of people, myself included, were kind of thinking, all right, the Dolphins could score and make this interesting, I'm not sure how many people were actually thinking Dolphins victory at that point. An amazing showing. The running game, 86 yards, it sustained, right? Tua Tagovailoa, absolutely amazing. Making the deep throws, which I had doubts about. He's making good decisions, which was another question that I had about him. And outside of that, he did what he has showed in the past, right, with the accuracy and the intermediate and short-range passing game. I like what Mike McDaniel's offense shows with that horizontal, vertical stretch of the field. You're going to get a lot of one-on-one matchups. You get the ball to Tyreek Hill, you get the ball to Jalen Waddle, and you let them go to work. Dave Hyde, what did you see in that Baltimore game from the Dolphins, and how much of that is a lasting opinion for the whole season, do you think?
Well, what you saw for the first time since, to be honest, since Arizona, his first year, you saw some electricity from Tua. Okay, and I'm not talking a good throw here, a good throw there, but you saw electricity, dynamic play, and you know, I've been sitting here waiting to say, okay, look, if he shows you, I had no idea how good he's going to be or how good he'll be. But you had to see a day like that to say, okay, there's the ceiling. Okay, there's what he can do. Because we hadn't seen that. You've seen accuracy. You've seen him, do this and that, not make dumb mistakes. Okay, those are two important components. But you hadn't seen electricity. And that's something you saw today. Now, you can praise Tua and the offense. And you said they're going to get one-on-one matchups with Tyreek Hill. If they get one-on-one matchups with Tyreek Hill, I'm going to wonder about if all the defensive coordinators stop as called on Sunday, or the defenders were. I have no idea. It's like spinning two plates here, two thoughts you can keep at the same time. One is Tua and the offense had a great dynamic. Coming back from 21 points in the fourth quarter, tremendous. The second plate is the only way Baltimore gets beat is if they do what they did. They have one-on-one against Tyreek. They let him get 7 yards beyond him. To be honest, I thought Tua's best passes weren't the deep ones to Tyreek Hill. They were the ones that get second. And then the winning touchdown pass where he actually did something we haven't seen very much of. He created a play. He spun out of it, and he went running through a perfect. We haven't seen a lot of that. So, Brett Tua,
yeah, and Dave, when you talk about that pass to Gesicki, I agree because, look, when I went back and watched the game, Baltimore only rushed 2. They dropped 9 into coverage. And for Tua to have the patience to deliver that ball where he did, and look, you can say that it was a high throw. I think it was strategically high. And that was the place where only the 6'6" Mike Gesicki could get it. And Gesicki goes up and makes an outstanding play. But listen, I saw a lot of good things from Tua as far as the decision making and the deep throw and keeping his poise under pressure. Look, that wasn't an easy game. And you can say whatever. Well, you wrote that game off, and at some point, you're just free to chuck it around the yard like a school kid. Doesn't matter. He showed me a lot in that game. It's still too early for final decisions, but he showed me a lot in that game, and I was very encouraged by what I saw in that game. Dave, when we talk about that game, let's talk about the defense, because as you know, I'm one who probably overhypes this defense. I'm really, really high on this defense. What they showed me early in that game was really surprising. I thought that this was a defense that things like that would never happen to on a consistent basis. Yeah, maybe they get burned on a deep pass and, maybe Lamar runs for a long touchdown or whatever, but what we saw from that defense was consistently getting beaten. And I think the truth about that defense is somewhere in between what we saw this Sunday and what we saw in the opening week against New England. I still have a lot of faith in that defense, but this goes back to, what do we believe about this Dolphins team through 2 weeks, Dave? What do you believe about the defense through 2 weeks?
Well, last year, Tennessee game, the big game of the year, they got run over. They got dragged up and down the field. Okay, so what I saw in Baltimore, an offense that wants to play physical. Okay, look, Lamar Jackson's on another level. Okay, put him over there. But they tried to run the ball up the middle repeatedly like Tennessee did. And in power plays, they had first and goal at the 2. The defense stopped them, and Lamar Jackson fumbles on 4th down. They have 4th and 1 to win the game basically in the fourth quarter when they're what were they up by 3 or was it tie? And the defense stopped them again and gave the ball to the offense, which goes down and scores. They've shored up, at least it looks like in the first 2 games, a lot of their middle run defense, which Tennessee took care of. Jenkins A big body in the middle is part of that, but also the guys that Christian Wilkins and Zach Saylor and the guys they had in there are doing the job. So, yeah, I mean, was it surprising that they got, they got, exposed in the first three quarters? Yeah, but that's Lamar Jackson. That's great. That's a great dynamic player playing to the top of his game, okay, in the first three quarters. But for all the talk of the offense on Sunday, when it came down to the last four possessions for Baltimore, they either they turned the ball over or they got a field goal. So 3 points in the last four possessions. They made a stand too.
Yeah, they did. They made an outstanding stand. And look, the 4th and 1 with Landon Roberts and Trey Flowers, and that goal line stand with Landon Roberts and Christian Wilkins, just outstanding work by that defense. And very quickly, Dave, we've talked offense and defense. Let's delve into special teams very briefly. What do you make of that 103-yard kickoff return touchdown? Mike McDaniel said yesterday that special teams coach Danny Crossman, in more than 20 years in the NFL special teams, that was the first time he had a kickoff return for a touchdown. So I'm sure this was a gut punch for Danny Crossman. I thought special teams bounced back and played a good game. When you look at the punting, again, of Thomas Morstead, you look at how they covered the punts, you look at the kickoffs. I thought special teams came back and played well, but are you alarmed by that kickoff return? And look, the Dolphins, let's also tip our hats. They came back from that gut punch. But are you alarmed in any way by that kickoff return or concerned about Dolphins special teams as a whole?
Well, I mean, that's not the way to start a game. 103-yard kickoff return, that's brutal. I mean, the Dolphins haven't had a 2019 they had a kickoff return for them, but special teams were a problem last year. They were great in 2020. They were a problem last year. Mainly, we're talking kicking, of course, mainly. But so that's not the way you want to start a game. That's about as bad a way you can start a game. I mean, giving up 103 yards, and it put them in a hole. I mean, I know they came back and tied it, but then all of a sudden Baltimore scores again, and they're quickly up 21-7 in the game, and that's really what started the Dolphins digging out of their problems.
We will see about this. Sorry about that. We'll see about this Dolphins team this week. We'll know a whole lot more in the Buffalo game, this huge AFC East showdown, if you can have a huge showdown in week 3. But we will find out.
That Perk, we want to have a showdown. I mean,
we do.
The games that we had in the last 20 years, and certainly for the Dolphins. Let us have this one, right?
I agree. This is a AFC East showdown, the battle for AFC East supremacy. And look, and you pointed out something very, very good, Dave Hyde, as we wrap up segment 1 here. This is about as good as the circumstances externally that the Dolphins can have, from the standpoint of it's a 1:00 September game. You think it's going to be hot and humid, and the Bills are coming off of a short week. So that all works in the Dolphins' favor. So we'll see what happens here. That's segment 1 here on Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk. Let's go into segment 2. All right, so here we go. Segment 2. We're going to talk Mike McDaniel, and we're going to answer some reader questions from Twitter here. Again, this is Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk. That's Dave Hyde. I'm Chris Perkins. Dave, I love the Mike McDaniel offense. Again, the horizontal and vertical stretch of the field, the medium to short range passes, the incorporation of the run game, and beyond that, that's schematics. That's kind of football on paper. Let's go a little bit more abstract. I thought the way that Mike McDaniel handled this Baltimore game, especially at halftime, was absolutely brilliant, right? He didn't go off. He didn't turn over the water cooler. He didn't cuss players out. He just told them, look, let's get back to playing some Dolphins football. Ignore the score for a while. do what you do best, and let's see what happens. And I thought that probably served to kind of, pick the team up, give them a dose of reality. Hey, the sky is not falling. Let's go out here and see what happens. Let's do what we do, see if we can put that together. And it worked, Dave. It worked. What do you think about Mike McDaniel's offense and his handling of the team?
I'm envisioning Mike McDaniel trying to tip over a water cooler at halftime. Could he do it? I mean, that's not his personality. His personality, cerebral, funny, witty, positive, and you see that the team buying into that and appreciating that. Okay, part of it's I believe it's for the previous 3 years under Brian Flores, you had tough love. Now you get a coach, a boss who puts his arm around you and says, we're going to be good. Everything's going to be good. Okay. And he comes in with ideas to match his optimism. Okay. Look at the 2 deep passes to Tyreek Hill on Sunday. Those were the same play flipped on the other side. On one side, he lines up on the right. You have 3 receivers, tight end being one of them on the other side. And then the other deep pass, he's on the other side, and the 3 receivers on one. So the defense is going to have to pick how are they going to do it. You got young defensive backs there who got confused of how they were going to cover. You see the motion, you see the misdirection. These are simple plays that they're running, but you incorporate the ideas of dressing them up as they have done. And it's good to see an offense run like an NFL offense, like a good NFL offense, because we haven't seen that in a few years.
And David, as I've talked to players in the locker room, through the couple of weeks that the locker room has been open, it was training camp before that, they've said that, we like the way Mike McDaniel handles us. We like the energy, and like you said, it's positive energy. It's not a lot of criticizing and tearing down to kind of build them up and make them tougher. It is true, genuine, positive feedback, and constructive feedback also. It's something that really seems to work. And this team is buying in. And what I like about McDaniel and, both his scheme and the way that he handles this team, he's not coming in with a set way of saying, this is how I do things. This is how my offense works. This is how I'm going to run the locker room. I think he incorporates his ideas with the reality of his team. And I really like that. I'm not sure that happened with some of the past coaches. But let me throw this at you, Dave Hyde. How important is that attitude and handling of the team? We've heard the stories of we don't, perhaps Flores did not fully support Tua. Is Tua feeding off of some quote unquote love from Mike McDaniel? Is the team feeding off of some love from Mike McDaniel? And does that make a difference?
Well, look, there's a lot of ways up the mountain. Okay, Flores' personality was to be tough. Okay, that's who he is. That's how he grew up. It's how he learned to be a coach under Bill Belichick. And it worked. They won a lot of games. They won games with outmanned rosters, okay? And so, I'm not on the bandwagon of saying, boy, Flores was his way just didn't work. It did work, okay? And you can say he had now, did they misread Tua? Maybe. We'll see how this plays out, okay? Because that coaching staff, I kind of laugh when everybody is putting out video now saying this media person said this and about Tua and this said this. Okay, look, the team twice tried to tried to replace him in a period of 4 or 5 months. Okay, forget what the media says. The team. That's who Tua doesn't care what the media said. He cares what the team was saying, and the team was saying he's replaceable. They need to replace him with Deshaun Watson initially, right to the trade deadline, then with Tom Brady in the offseason. So that's, to me, if I'm Tua, that's the place I'm really going to stick it up to, all those people inside the organization or the past coaching staff who didn't believe in me. Okay, and if that happens now, as far as I love McDaniel. I love the way he coaches. I hope there's room for this in football because he does it in a refreshing way. He's fun to talk to. He's human. He shows you can have some, you can joke around a little, okay? But he's 2-0. let's wait for the crown. Adam Gase after his first year was great. Tony Sperano after his first year was great. Joe Philbin had his best year in his first year. Okay, let's let it play out a little. I hope he makes it because it's refreshing to me to see a personality like this winning. Okay, but we're gonna have to pump the brakes a little here on this.
Yeah, I would agree, but I like what I see from Mike McDaniel so far. All right, let's answer some Twitter questions from you. And I solicited some questions, and you guys sent me some questions, and so we're going to go over them here. A few of them. Let's go first to our question from John G. And John G says, has Teron Armstead made a big difference these last two games? Or is the offensive line looking better as a whole? Looked like Tua had some good protection on Sunday. Dave, I would say that Teron Armstead has made a difference because he's one person that you can just say, all right, one-on-one, we don't have to worry. And we're going to see this week because I think he'll get Von Miller a lot from Buffalo. So I think he has made a difference. How much of a difference and what's it going to translate to? I don't know. Look, you still have some new working parts and Greg Little now playing right tackle because Austin Jackson is on the short-term injured reserve list with that ankle injury. And you do still have Connor Williams playing center for the first time in his career, although he is a proven NFL offensive lineman. Dave, what are your thoughts very quickly on this offensive line? Because I believe Tua has been sacked 4 times. He's had a lot of hurries, but not a lot of knockdowns or pressures. What do you think about the offensive line?
Yeah, I mean, look, they were a disaster. They've been so bad in recent years. It's nice to see a functioning offensive line. Okay, look, they went out and bought Armstead because he's a foundational piece of any offensive line. Okay, he can pass block, he can run block, he can move a little. We've seen, and then you have Connor Williams at center, who's all the talk was about high snaps and everything in preseason. That part should. He's learned that would play itself out, I would think. But you're seeing a guy who looks pretty good at center, and they were quite, they move people all around again. But once they made their decisions, they locked them in there all training camp, all preseason, instead of moving them all over the place like they did to some guys last year. So, look, the foundational bit of these coaching staffs, a lot of them have offensive line background. McDaniel was the run game coordinator for years in San Diego. Frank Smith, the offensive coordinator, came as the Rams offensive line coach. Now then they have 2 line coaches. So if these guys couldn't get this offensive line right, then it's nobody probably can, and they'd have to go out and get all new linemen. So it looks like a serviceable and improving offensive line. Let's see where it is in a month from now, because it really should be better.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. Let's go to our second question from Alex D. What do you make of Jalen Phillips and the lack of pressure? This is something that we got last week. I'm not very concerned about it. I'm more concerned about the defense as a unit. I don't assume improvement. I know Jalen had 8.5 sacks last year. I don't assume that he's going to have 9, 10, 11 sacks this year. I want to see improvement from the pass rush. I want to see improvement from the defense as a unit. Every player is not going to be rising every week, every year. But how does he play within the scheme? I don't think he's been an anchor on the defense. So I'm not concerned about that very much at this point through 2 games. Dave Hyde, what are your thoughts on Jalen Phillips?
Well, I would say the pass rush as a whole wasn't there on Sunday. I mean, Lamar Jackson isn't the easiest guy to sack. I get it. But it didn't seem there was all that much pressure on him either. And now they come in and they play another guy who's just as difficult in his own way to bring down or to put pressure on because he's big, he's fast, and he has a rocket arm. So you want development. You want a development as a second-year player, Jalen Phillips, okay? And I'm not worried after 2 games, but you get to 6 games or something and you haven't seen. I remember Jimmy Johnson's line to Jason Taylor. He walked in Jason's 3rd year, I believe it was, and He'd been invisible for the first 6 or 7 games, and Jimmy comes into a team meeting. He goes, "Hey, has anybody seen Jason Taylor?" And Jason will tell you this is a year he got a little caught up in the fun scene of South Florida, but he kind of raises his hand in the meeting. Jimmy says, "Anybody seen Jason Taylor?" He goes, "Here I am, Coach." "Anybody seen Jason Taylor?" He stands at Coach. He goes, "Oh, anybody seen him? Tell him we're in the 7th game of the year, and we'd like to see him out there." So there are times when young guys' development, it's not a straight line up. Okay, I'm not worried about at this point, but yeah, you want to see more impactful plays.
All right, Dave, let's go to the running game. Finn's Family Podcast sends in this one. Raheem Mostert looks really explosive out there. 79 yards on 14 touches is no joke. Is it time to get him more involved? I'll say this. I've been encouraged by both of the running backs, Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert. Neither of them has done anything really eye-popping, but both of them have it was Edmonds in the first game and now Mostert in this game. Both of them have been consistent. Now, we haven't seen a 100-yard rushing game. We haven't seen a 100-yard receiving game, but we've seen some consistency. And, when I was talking to Chase Edmonds last week, he was saying that, I discovered early in my career that catching the ball is something that could set me apart from other running backs. And he said, "Look, I know situations in football, and I know that I can be the quarterback's best friend." And I said, "Chase, nowadays you usually hear people saying that the tight end is the quarterback's best friend." And he said, "No, I know when that guy is in trouble, I know that I can be the bailout guy. I can do something with the ball." And I like that approach. And I think that's the offensive kind of the schemes approach also. You're not going to see a whole lot of those tight ends running the underneath routes. You'll probably see the receivers running the wheel routes or underneath. I mean the running backs, I'm sorry. I like the way that the running backs are used in this offense. We'll see what they can do ultimately. I don't think they'll necessarily play a bigger role unless it's game specific, but I like what they've been doing so far. Dave Hyde, what are your thoughts on the running backs, both on the ground and in the pass game?
Yeah, they've been fine. The idea is to use both of them. Okay, and that's what they're doing. You're going to need both of them. Okay, over the season, you're probably going to need 1 or 2 more. The way it works in the NFL. So I'm a little surprised that to what you said that they haven't used them more in the passing game. And maybe this is something that develops as this offense. Everybody gets comfortable with the offense and knowing what to do. Now, the hard part against the Buffalo is they have a strong pass rush. You're going to need your back to help out. Greg Rousseau has 2 sacks. Von Miller's coming from the other side. They're very strong up the middle. So, but you've seen the speed in the running backs. You've seen the glimmer here and there of what they can do, and so we'll see where it goes. We're only 2 games in right now.
All right, our next question comes from Eric Gadea. I believe that's how you pronounce the last name. Sorry if I butchered it there, Eric. He writes, "What is wrong with this defense? They look unprepared. What areas of the defense have been most disappointing to you? What adjustments do they need to make?" Dave, I'm going to throw this one to you first.
Well, let's remember game 1, they dominated New England. Okay, so what you're talking about is 3 quarters roughly in Baltimore where, yeah, they had some vulnerability there. And some of that's Lamar Jackson, his speed and his flash. And, the magic sometimes on the other sideline too. And it wasn't that game, okay? Lamar Jackson showed you why he's great for 3 quarters. But give the defense credit. They were on their heels for 3 quarters. For most of 3 quarters, they did have a goal line stand. They made a few other plays. But in the 4th quarter, they let the offense win the game. Okay, they turned the ball over to the offense. They got the ball back to the offense without, Baltimore got 3 points on the board. So, if I'm a Dolphin fan right now, I'm saying, okay, we won game 1 with dominant defense. We won game 2 with electric offense. We're showing components that really good teams have. They don't have one way to win a game. So, 2 games in, I'm pretty happy what I've seen if I'm a Dolphin fan.
Yeah, and as far as the defense, unprepared, they might have been. They got trucked. in the first three quarters. There's no other way to put it, but they were able to find their footing. And I think that's the sign of a good defense is that, look, everything is not going to go your way every series, every half, every week. But can you right yourself? Can you find your footing and do what you need to do? And they were able to do that in this game. Now, as you say, the pass rush wasn't always there. Lamar Jackson can do some things to you that puts you on your heels with that 79-yard run, the 75-yard pass. But I still have faith in this Dolphins defense. There are going to be hiccups. This is not a perfect defense. I'm not saying this is the best defense in the NFL. I'm not saying it's the best defense the Dolphins have ever had. But I think this defense overall is a rock, and I'm not too worried about this defense. All right, let's wrap it up with Dan Gunta here. He wants to know, what was your biggest takeaway from this team overall? Also, knowing Buffalo tends to play a lot of zone, do you think Miami will be able to conduct an efficient game plan offensively? Dave Hyde, I will throw this over to you first. Also, your biggest takeaway, and what do you think about the game plan?
Well, come on. The biggest takeaway has to be Tua, right? I mean, it has to be they're down 21 points in the fourth quarter. And I think there was some stat out there that's 0-177 or for teams down that much in the fourth quarter. And it hadn't happened in, since 2010 or going back to 2010. And so, I mean, your takeaway is just that to me, because I hadn't seen that from a Tua offense in 2+ years. I go back again to the Arizona game. It might have been his first game, and you saw some dynamic plays, and I thought, okay, they got something here. And I really hadn't seen very much of that until that game. And so that's my takeaway. And as far as Buffalo, look, Buffalo's without their top cornerback, Tre'Davious White. Okay, he's like Byron Jones. He's PUP, and he's a great cornerback. Okay, and so Buffalo is playing great without him. But there's places you're going to be able to attack if you're the Dolphins offense, and I think they're looking at how to get at that secondary at this point.
Yeah, but, it's hard to come away with a single takeaway from that game because there were so many impressive things. Tua is number one on my list, as you said, Dave Hyde, because that is a very, very difficult situation on a lot of levels. You have nothing working for you. You're getting trounced. You're on the road. And he comes back and he makes play after play after play after play, makes the good throws, makes the right decisions, uses his feet to get out of trouble. So that was a takeaway. Mike McDaniel and the game plan and the way that he handled the team was a takeaway. The way that the team was able to come back from the gut punches of the halftime deficit, the fourth quarter deficit, the 103-yard kickoff return, the defense was able to right itself in the fourth quarter. So really, I wrote about the fighting spirit of this team, and if I had to have a single takeaway, I think that's it. That the spirit of this team, as Mike McDaniel said, there's a bunch of times they could have folded and they didn't. So if I had to consolidate all those individual parts, it would be the fighting spirit of this team. But look, Tua was right there. That was an absolutely outstanding performance. And what do I think about the offense this week? Well, the Dolphins coaching staff and the team, the offense has showed me they can take care of things. So I'm not very concerned about what they're going to do this week as far as the game plan against Buffalo. I think the game plan will be good. How is the execution going to be? Because look, I don't know how you stop Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill if you get the ball in their hands. That's very, very tough to stop.
Well,
so, all right. So
that's one way you don't let them get behind you. That'd be the first. I'm a defensive coordinator. I'm doing what New England did. Okay, we'll give up 8-yard passes if we have to, but you're not going to get the 60-yard pass. But that's the danger of Waddle and Hill. You got to pick who you're going to double, and you saw Baltimore have problems with it.
All right, that's the end of segment 2, and look, that's going to lead us right into segment 3 here on Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk. All right, so segment 3, Buffalo, baby. It's Buffalo week. That used to be a big thing in the Dolphins locker room in the early 2000s. It's Buffalo week and everything that entailed at that time. And so when we look at this game right now, the significance of it is supremacy of the AFC East, right? And so we're going to talk about that again. Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk. I'm Chris Perkins. I'm your host and your Dolphins columnist. That's Dave Hyde, your Sentinel columnist. And Dave, I thought you wrote about it very well today when you talked about, it's been a long time since we've had a game of this significance, a regular season game in Dolphins franchise history. How big a game is this? When you look at long-term ramifications, can there be long-term ramifications from a Week 3 game? Can you think of a recent Week 3 game where there were long-term ramifications?
Well, I never thought I'd have to go back. I went back through a lot of years to today before I wrote this column, and there wasn't a season where you said in September, okay, if they win this, they're in the conversation for contention, okay? And that's where we are because of the first 2 weeks, because they beat New England. They had that game against Baltimore. Okay, those are 2 potential playoff teams that they beat, okay? New England isn't as good as they have been, obviously. Baltimore, they're a good team. They're a good team and now you come to the class of the AFC, them in Kansas City for the past couple years in Buffalo. And so the idea is, okay, if you come out of this with a win, you're not only 3-0, but look who you've beaten in the stretch. You're right there to be in the conversation for playing deep into the NFL season. Now, if they lose, this is a rare case, and I can't, if they lose and they're respectable, big deal. Big deal, because they're 2-1. They're they could be 3-1 at Cincinnati, or even 2-2. You're fine with that when you look at the schedule, because, and again, it comes to how they play, obviously, as long as you don't get run off the field. But because of the schedule, they're fine even with a loss to Buffalo right now. But a win would say more to me than a loss would.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Dave. I think this is one of those rare early season games where a team has much more to gain than it does to lose. And what I mean by that is, I'm not saying that the Dolphins are playing with house money here, because they're still trying to prove things to themselves. Forget about what I think or what the rest of the media thinks or the rest of the nation. They're still trying to prove things to themselves. But I think the performance in the first 2 games has told them a lot about themselves. And, the ability to protect home field against New England, the ability to go on the road and win under just some of the most adverse circumstances we've seen in a long time. And look, you were right. And it's, Dave, it's 0-711 when you talk about the teams, coming back from that 14-point fourth quarter deficit. 711 games, according to ESPN Stats and Information. And since 2010, I believe it was, the Giants. And so that's got to give you a lot of confidence that you could weather that storm. Now, as we look ahead, boy, if you can beat Buffalo, oh my goodness! I mean, that just goes a long way for I think mostly for the mental of this team, but also for the actual concrete stuff, the game plan stuff, the execution stuff. It just gives you so much confidence moving ahead when you're under adversity, when you're trailing in a game, or maybe you've lost back-to-back games, or you have a wave of injuries. You could always go back to how you started 3-0, and I think that gives you so much confidence. If you lose, like you say, Dave Hyde, if you play a good game, that's the way it goes. You can't win them all. You're maybe not there where you're going to be right now at the end of Week 18. That journey is ongoing. That's probably the biggest thing that a loss would tell me, is that, well, we're still climbing the hill. We're not halfway up the mountain. We're not 3/4 of the way up the mountain. We're still climbing. But as long as the Dolphins play well, I don't think that there's not many ways that this could be a discouraging game even if they lose. So, but Dave, let me ask you this though: what is the blueprint for winning this game? Because we've seen how the Dolphins beat New England. We saw how they beat Buffalo. Could they win a shootout? Could this be a low-scoring game? What are you thinking right now?
Well, the initial blueprint is look at what the Rams did in the opener and Tennessee did Monday night, and don't do that. Okay, don't do what they got run off the field. Okay, and that's the Super Bowl defending Super Bowl champ and the defending number 1 seed in the AFC got run off the field by Buffalo. So let's not pretend that Buffalo has a lot of weak spots out there. The dream scenario would be a low-scoring game for the Dolphins. I'm not sure you're going to be able to hold Josh Allen down, just like you couldn't hold Lamar Jackson down the whole day. Okay, and so but the good thing about the Dolphins is for the past few years they haven't had much offense. Okay, and so they had to play low-scoring games. They showed you yesterday or Sunday they have the ability to put points on the board this year. Now, can they do it against a very good Buffalo defense? We'll see. Buffalo's a class. They're the Dolphins' daddy right now, not New England. They've beat the Dolphins 7 straight times. And you get Josh Allen. I get the idea he knows the Dolphins passed him over in the draft, and meaning they could have traded up for him rather than Buffalo, and they didn't. And so I think he has something special against the Dolphins. He plays like it.
All right, Dave, it is prediction time. And so the Bills come into here as, the AFC East favorite in a lot of people's minds. You can say whatever you want about Kansas City, but a lot of people have the Buffalo Bills as the AFC favorites, and then definitely the AFC East favorites. The Dolphins are at home, and that goes a long way. But I am going to go with the chalk here. I'm going to take Buffalo 24-21. I think it's going to be a very close game, a game that's going to show a lot of the Dolphins' offense and the electricity and the pop that it has. But ultimately, I do think that Buffalo's experience is going to be the difference in this game. So I'm going to go Buffalo 24-21. Dave, what are you thinking here?
I'm going to root for me here. And for me, the good story, the better story, the one to write it would be more fun to write is if the Dolphins win. So I'll say they'll win 27-24 in an upset because, look, it's easy to look at Buffalo right now and say, to me, they're winning so easily. I mean, their starters were on the bench in the third quarter yesterday. Josh Allen was, Diggs were, that something's got to go wrong for them. And I'll just say things are going so well for the Dolphins right now. They go 3-0, and they could be like the 72 Dolphins. They're still perfect book out again. They go 17-0, Perk. What do you think?
Hey, I would love that. I would love that. That's as a journalist, you do root for the best story. You want to be realistic, but you root for the best story. So that would be the best story. We will see. That's this edition of Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk. I'm Chris Perkins. That's Dave Hyde. We'll see you next week.